If I had done more karaoke before I got here, we would be starting 2 minutes late. Take this off, right? My name is Darryl Kubrin, and in a perfect world, this goes like this, right? So, Darryl Kubrin, Special Teams Consulting, and Chair of the Safe Banking Subcommittee for Diversity, Inclusion, and Social Equity Committee for NCIA. I'm going to introduce you to my very esteemed panel of folks here to my left, and briefly just share that all of them are far more qualified than I am to be on this stage, and also share a little bit about how I got to meet Terry Neely of West Coast AML Services over here all the way to my right. In 2010, on the advice of civil counsel, after I opened up a mutual benefit not-for-profit corporation for our Cannabis Collective, my civil attorney marched me down to a bank, introduced me to the vice president of that bank. I shook the guy's hand, and I didn't hide behind any vague, gauzy descriptions of what we were doing. We were not in a wellness center, we were a cultivation collective, and the name of our bank account was the higher calling, and in parentheses, THC. At that point in Proposition 215, medical paradigm, pre-regulation, we were told that if you distinguish yourself from the quote-unquote criminal element and you stepped out of the shadows, you would be treated appropriately. And we stepped out of the shadows and we were treated like a cockroach on the countertop. And so I introduced ourselves to the vice president of the bank, explained to him exactly what we were doing, and started to deposit copious amounts of cash. We believed that Capone went to jail for tax evasion, not bootlegging, and we purposely did not structure our deposits because we understood at that time that structuring deposits is illegal, even if the source of funds isn't. And so we put in very big bags of money, and within 90 days, they came down, banging down all of our doors, and they arrested 13 people, and they took everything we owned. And asset forfeiture was really fun. I don't recommend it. And we litigated that case for the following 5 years. They charged me with 127 counts of money laundering for the way that I tried to compliantly transact cannabis cash in the banking system. They charged my wife with, I think, 87 counts of money laundering. And at the end of 5 years, I told them I'd plead to anything, just drop all the charges against my wife because she still had our children to raise, and they sentenced me to 5 years. And I just pled to the sheet. I didn't really understand what money laundering was at that point because I thought if I was being transparent about where the money came from, that we're only as sick with our secrets. I'm not a lawyer. Luckily, we have a few on this panel. And I'm here to say that my qualification is that I have a conviction for money laundering in the way that I attempted to bank cannabis cash 11 and 12 years ago. And that was not a very fun experience. And in a medical model, you had an affirmative defense, which meant that they didn't need to prove that you were guilty, you had to prove yourself innocent. And best advice back then was that you didn't keep records, which could be federally incriminating. So how do you prove yourself innocent if you don't have any records because you were told not to keep any records? So that's not a really fun place to be. And there's not an advice of counsel defense with medical marijuana back in those days. So our attorney was probably not as good as the attorneys you'll find at this conference today. And so that's what got me here. And before I introduce my panelists, I do want to thank NCIA, not only for the opportunity to discuss this and share my experience, but more importantly, to provide actionable intel to the people who've shown up today, banks that they can go and contact to get cannabis bank accounts. A lot of times I've seen banking panels where it's very much the 30,000-foot overview, which is great, I guess, if you're a glider or an airplane, but I'm a person, not boots on the ground. And so being able to walk away from this panel today with banks that you can contact to do business with seems to be the most valuable thing that we can provide. And luckily, I've got an amazing panel of people who have a lot of experience and insight.